everybody, this is Dianne. Welcome to the second episode of The Real Housewives of Alaska.
And this is Marnell. Sorry, I really didn't pay attention to this show because I was scrolling through my social media the entire time.
I thought you were going to say because you were rewatching Hail Satan yet again.
Oh, how I wish I had my TST mug.
Mine is on its way.
Yeah.
Along with my practical merch, the candle snuffer.
I bought buttons because they need to restock their hoodies because they come in sizes from small to 4X, but the only sizes they currently have in their hoodies are small and 4X.
Maybe on the flip side, that means that more people have watched Hail Satan and they're buying merch.
I would hope so.
I hope so, too.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say, before we start podcasting, and we are podcasting about the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma, tonight, that it is very meta to podcast about the evils of social media.
Could you imagine what it would be like for people who created social media to now be like, social media is bad. Stop being on social media.
It was very interesting, and we'll talk about that.
Yes, we will.
I also want to say that the quote that it opens up with, "Nothing vast enters the life of mortals without a curse," is amazing. And then I started researching it. And it is a quote from Sophocles, who was a Greek tragedian. He wrote Greek tragedies. And he wrote one of my all-time favorite plays, Antigone.
And what's Antigone about?
Antigone is about the daughter of Oedipus and Jocasta. Jocasta was both Oedipus's mom or his wife, and he later found out his mom because he was cursed.
Right.
So I remember reading and loving Antigone in English Lit when I was in high school.
Nerd alert.
Nerd alert. Completely.
You always have to show me up in your English literature side. It's
only because I took AP English and loved it, and Alma Harris was like one of my lifesavers when I was in high school. Like, I can count on my hands 5 teachers who completely saved my life between middle school and high school, and she's one of them.
So, if you were in high school now, do you think you'd be the same, or would social media just have totally hijacked you?
I don't know that I have a good answer for that. I mean, I think I wouldn't have the access to social media then, or, I wouldn't have the access to social media if we grew up in the same family structure, just because we weren't that well off.
Mm-mm.
I mean, we didn't starve, but there's no way I'd have a new fancy phone every couple of years.
Right.
So I'm not sure, and I'm not even sure that I would have a home computer, although it seems like every kid has a home computer these days.
At this point, even before COVID, you kind of had to.
But how do families afford that? I mean, there truly are families that still do not have tech, and I think that we would have been right on that margin of families who might have had some tech, but it wouldn't have been good tech, wouldn't have been fancy tech.
So here's the thing is there's a lot of opportunity to actually get the tech. It's Wi-Fi that most people have a problem with. I specifically remember seeing something on the news about some inner city kids who were having to do their homework outside of a McDonald's because the McDonald's had free Wi-Fi. They had computers from school that school had given them, but they didn't have internet at home.
Well, and then you wonder, going back to the social media question, do those computers that come from school have protections on them that keep kids from accessing social media?
So, I don't know about that, but I do remember reading an article where there was a I don't want to say a school, but
Speaking of social media, is that you getting notifications?
that is not well, that is notifications that somebody is in the house is opening an outer door.
Ah, okay.
I believe we just got a delivery. We actually that was probably Instacart. Because we don't shop for groceries anymore. We order that stuff online.
Oh, God. That may end up being my life here shortly, but we'll talk about that too.
So there was a school district that was actually installing software on the computers that they lended to students that would remotely turn on their cameras.
Oh, that's kind of creepy.
Could you see how that could be problematic?
Jeffrey Toobin.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I actually do not leave my laptop open when it's like in my bedroom or, like on the coffee table or anything. So not a huge thing for me. It is open when I'm in the bath and watching movies on it. So
they want to make sure that kids are there and dressed and being proper. And I mean, and
but
I get wanting to make sure. Yes, that's where I was just going. I get wanting to make sure that kids are attending, but to like have them set up so that their cameras automatically turn on. No, not okay.
Right. And, especially like off school hours or something like that, because working remotely now, we all have Skype on our computers, and I'm always logged into Skype, and I always tell people if my Skype is green, you can call me or Skype me or whatever, and I will pick up. But you can tell if I've been away from my computer for 5 minutes. If I haven't done anything on my computer for 5 minutes, it'll say away for 5 minutes. Or if I'm on a Skype call or a Zoom meeting or something like that, that's on my calendar, I will show as red, as in I'm in a meeting or busy. And if I've put myself as busy, I will put the little notification note that says I'm working on such and such and you will be available again at this time, So my boss always knows that, during business hours, she can contact me in some way, and I mean, I don't wear makeup anymore or anything, but like, sure, if you want me to turn on my camera in our Skype meeting, I will, but it's just not going to be a pretty sight. But I just can't imagine if they were able to do that remotely, and at any time.
Not okay.
No.
Which, by the way, before we get into our ratings, I just have to say, Jeffrey Toobin, who does that?
Right?
He knew he was on a work call.
Right? And someone, I think it was an idiot at BuzzFeed. I swear to God, it was BuzzFeed. Was trying to make excuses for him.
Like, no excuses.
Right? They were like, well, with everyone having, all this stress of COVID and having to teach their children from home and not being able to go to work, and there's just no private time. And somebody was like, you don't have a private bathroom, you don't shower alone, you can do that then.
And you don't do it when you're not on a phone call for work, on a Zoom call for work.
Right?
Which, by the way, I mean, if you don't know what we're talking about by now, Google Jeffrey Toobin and masturbation. We can say that on this podcast. I was going to say,
you can just Google Jeffrey Toobin
right.
at this point.
I saw the funniest meme, and I don't know, maybe I mentioned it to you, but it was like, women who masturbate. The lights are out. The kids are gone. The door's locked. And then it's like men who masturbate. Meh.
Yeah. Anytime, anywhere, any place.
Oh my God. All right. So speaking of social media and inappropriate things on social media and all of that, how did you rate this documentary? Oh, and by the way, it's a Netflix documentary for people who don't know.
So I probably rated it rather low, and I will get into my reasoning why. I rated it 3.5 stars.
Oh my God, you did rate it very low. So
I did.
What would you say in terms of good, bad, recommended?
I would absolutely recommend it. My rating stems from the fact that I feel like I knew all of this already. And I also don't feel like I'm a huge, and I will get more into this. I don't feel like I'm a huge, oh God. Can you hear that?
I can. That's almost as bad as being at my house.
Yes, I bought Dexter 4 new squeaky toys today, and he is enjoying them thoroughly. So I don't feel like I don't feel like I'm a victim of social media that much. I don't feel like it alters my behavior in some grand way.
Ooh, I feel like maybe you're not as conscious of it as you should be.
Okay, but here's the thing. Like, I don't really have that much of an addictive personality, and I will use Las Vegas as an example.
Wait a minute. This is the woman who makes constant references to how much she drinks and has sight gags on video podcasts that we do about drinking. Hold the phone.
Who is currently drinking a pumpkin ale.
Okay, case in point.
Okay, but no, I don't think that I have addictive personality in that, like, I could stop anytime that I want to, and I have, and I do for different reasons. I just, it's something that I want to do. I choose to do it. I don't feel like I'm seduced into doing it. So when I go to Vegas, I go and I don't ever think that I'm not going to hit it big. I'm not going to win a slot. I'm not going to make a whole lot of money, that kind of thing. I budget a certain amount of money a day, and that is for entertainment. And whether I spend that on going to a concert, a show, go sand dune buggying, whatever, or if I spend it gambling, that is entertainment to me. I know what I'm paying for, and I don't expect anything back from it other than the value of the entertainment. I'm the same way with social media.
Okay, I'm going to call you out a little bit, though. Do you budget the amount of time you spend on social media?
Absolutely not. But I am only accountable to myself. I do not have children. I do not have, a partner who spends any less time on social media than I do. So, if I had more, like at work, I'm not on social media for the most part at work, except for breaks and lunches and things. No, but like it doesn't drive my day.
Madame, methinks thou dost protest too much.
Okay, and now having said that, I absolutely will fall down a rabbit hole. Like if I go to Vegas, every once in a while, I am seduced by that progressive slot machine, that I see that number climbing a little higher and a little higher and a little higher. And it's like, if I put in $20, I could get to $1 million, and same thing goes for ghosts. And I will fully admit, I love TikTok, and I have an unhealthy love for TikTok, and I know it, but again, I am not accountable to children or anybody else. My dogs are fed. I have a robot that cleans my house. I have accounted for all of the things that need to be done in my life. I order my groceries, like my stuff is taken care of. I have the time to watch 2.5 hours of TikTok videos instead of sleeping, but like I said, I do get seduced sometimes, but I don't think it alters my behavior in a way that I feel is negative to me. We were just talking about filters. I don't filter my photos because I think that's a negative thing. I think probably if I did alter my photos, I would have more of a negative body image issue. So, I try to be accountable to myself.
I love you, but I do think you're protesting an awful lot. and I have some self-insight and some admissions later on that go with that. So it's not like I'm not taking ownership of my own social media stuff, but All
right. What did you rate it?
So I rated it a lot higher, and it might be because you've already watched it a couple of times. Today was the first time I watched it. While I knew that social media was very manipulative, and I see how unhealthy it is, especially when I'm dealing with kids. because I don't see tons of pediatric patients, but I see enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I've certainly seen the behavior, for example, in my godson, and my friends' kids. Anyway, I felt like I learned a lot more about just how sick and manipulative social media is, and I felt like I knew some of it, but I certainly wasn't an expert in it. Not that this made me an expert in it, but you know what I mean.
Right.
Anyway, I give it 4.8 out of 5 stars. I said very good, recommended. I think from this point onward, Hail Satan is probably going to be my rubric.
Right.
So stuff is going to have to really measure up for it to be a 5.
Well, again, I think I wasn't shocked by too much of what I saw. When I first watched this about a month ago, I watched it like a couple days after it came out, and I just saw a ton of stuff on it where people were just like appalled, and my friends were texting me and they were like, "I kind of think I'm going to delete my social media," and I'm like, "No, you're not." But I didn't feel too surprised by much of what I saw. I think that's probably why I rated it a little lower.
I'm not even going to say I was shocked, but I am going to say, you know, there were certainly things where I was appalled.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe appalled is better than shocked to describe. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Shocked but not surprised.
Yeah. Okay, so this movie premiered at Sundance 2020, which I was like, was Sundance 2020 even a thing?
You know what? It was probably online.
That was my guess. I did not dig any deeper than that, but that was my guess. It released on Netflix September 9th of this year, so it's been out for about a month and a half. It has an 87% on Rotten Tomatoes, and Metacritic rated it 78 out of 100, which means generally favorable.
That's super meta. Metacritic, like the anti-social media movie.
Well, meta just means
I know.
Like when you do a meta-analysis in research, it just means you're conglomerating a bunch of things together. Yeah. So I think that's probably why they call it Metacritic. But anyway, I couldn't find anything about how much it cost to produce, or, you know, if it was, I mean, obviously it wasn't released in a theater because probably no theaters were released or were open at the time that it was released. So I can't really find anything about money. But there we are. I really liked the title because I find, and again, I'll talk about it more, but social media is definitely a dilemma for me. I feel like I use it way too much. I don't feel like it's healthy, but it's for me, it's an outlet. It's in some ways the only way I can keep in touch with people that I want to stay in touch with.
Right.
So it is very much a dilemma. I thought this film was well named.
I do too. Because again, it is such a dilemma. We are both old enough to know what it was like before the internet, let alone social media and computers in our pockets. So I kind of like it. I'm like, what did we do before all of this? Like, I mean, I guess I had pen pals.
It's funny that you bring that up because I definitely wrote a lot more letters. Now the only writing I do is I'll write out holiday cards, which, by the way, I ordered some phenomenal holiday cards, and I'm not going to ruin it by telling you what they are.
I kind of feel like I know.
They're pretty awesome.
Oh. But yeah, I feel like I probably talked on the phone a lot more. Whereas
the phone
now
with the giant cord that you had to go around behind the other wall.
Right.
That phone. If you were really lucky, maybe you had access to a cordless phone by the time you graduated from high school.
Ugh. God, and now like we actually just turned off of our landline. So it was kind of funny to me in the because they of course had a bunch of interviews, but they had a dramatization where you followed the storyline of a family who was dealing with their own children's social media well, they're actually the own family's social media addiction, not just the children, but when they bet the son that he couldn't stop for a week, and they had him like, you know, basically put his phone away. And I'm like, that's super unrealistic because, okay, there's a total difference between giving up social media and giving up your cell phone. Because if you just have a cell phone for texting and calling, that's one thing. So I think that like maybe they could have put some parental controls on it, or like had him delete all of his social media apps or something like that. Like maybe the mom could have deleted him and changed his passwords or something. But to give up like even calling friends and talking to, you know, texting friends, I just think that's unrealistic.
It wouldn't have been as dramatic for the movie enactment though.
Right. But yeah, I feel like before all this, I probably used to talk on the phone a lot more, and I actually don't like talking on the phone. I'm one of those people that when my phone rings, I stare in horror at it, and I'm like, why don't you just hang up and text me like a normal person? So I hate checking voicemail. I have a voicemail on my phone from Thursday that I refuse to check. I know who it is. I know who called me. I know what they called me about. I've already talked to them, you know, like.
Oh my God, that is really funny.
Yeah, I have a weird PTSD about talking on the phone, and I don't know what caused it somewhere in my life.
Well, I'll stop calling you so much.
No, you're okay. There's about 4 people in my life who like I'm totally okay to talk on my phone with. There's about 2 more people that I will awkwardly talk on the phone with, and then the rest I just refuse to answer the phone.
God, that's so funny.
Which is crazy. Like I'm getting over it, and I think it's exposure therapy because I actually have my work phone forwarded to my personal cell phone. Partly because I refuse to get a work cell phone and have 2 cell phones. But I only answer calls that I know that are obviously work on work hours.
So I have a work cell phone, and it's in my drawer at work, not charged. If I have to make a work phone call, I just block my number on my personal phone. All right. Okay, so our writers, and I'm probably going to mispronounce this first guy's last name, Davis. I don't know if it's Combe or Coombe, because it's got it's Coombe. It's got an E on the end. Vicky Curtis, and then Jeff Orlowski, who is the director. They actually all 3 worked on a documentary back in 2012 called Chasing Coral. What? Why are you laughing?
Coral!
Oh, jeez. Wrong podcast.
I know.
No, so Chasing Coral was about the vanishing coral reefs.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like Davis Combe. He's got 8 documentaries to his name. Vicky Curtis has 7 to her name, so they're documentarians. And then Jeff Orlowski is known for The Social Dilemma, Chasing Coral, and a movie called Chasing Ice. He co-wrote Social Dilemma and Chasing Coral with Vicky Curtis and Davis Combe, and then directed Social Dilemma, Chasing Coral, and Chasing Ice. And Chasing Ice is described as a multi-year record of the world's vanishing glaciers.
Oh, I thought it would be something about immigrations and customs enforcement.
Oh, or it could be about meth too. So, but no, it is about climate change.
I'm looking at Davis Coombs' IMDb, and I'm like, casting Jean Bonnet. I think I need to see that.
So I was looking at Jeff Orlowski's IMDb earlier, and his profile picture is one of him in diving gear, either just getting ready to go under or just coming up from a dive. And I was like, that guy looks like a really fun guy. So that's pretty much it about the writers and the director. I said that I wanted to do Tristan Harris as our hero this week, as Housewives' hero.
I'm so glad that you said his name, because I would have called him Tristan.
Well, only because I was paying attention the second time I watched it to how it was pronounced, because he pronounced it kind of unusually. So
Tristan is a graduate of Stanford University of Computer Sciences.
Okay, he went to this place called the School of Persuasive Technology, which I think is really creepy, and that was really disturbing to me.
Yeah, I thought so too. So his focus is on human-computer interaction. I find it interesting also that he's been a magician since he was little.
Right, that was cool. Yes.
Yeah, and like his tricks legitimately were really good.
Yes, they were.
And it's funny if you look at his Twitter, he does about 4 or 5 posts down. There's an homage to a magician who recently died.
Oh,
and
The Amazing Randy.
Yes, and there's actually a documentary about him out there, and he was encouraging people to go watch that documentary.
And if you're following Lucien Greaves and the Satanic Temple, they also mourned the loss of the Amazing Randy this week.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
That's right. I was like, I wonder why that sounds so familiar. So originally, Harris went into the master's program at Stanford, but in 2007, he dropped out and he created a startup called Apture.
Which I thought was really funny because it's so not the person that he is now, but...
Well, right. I mean, so Google acquired Apture.
Yes.
And Harris did some interning for Apple. He, of course, has worked for Google Inbox. And so now I think his primary focus is mostly on, he does a lot of speaking engagements, and he does quite a few documentaries on basically the dangers behind social media. There is one documentary that I think I may follow up The Social Dilemma with that he is in. It's called After Truth, and it's on HBO.
Oh, I watched that and didn't realize he was in it, and now I'm going to have to watch it again.
It's a look at the ongoing threat caused by the phenomenon of fake news in the U.S., focusing on the real-life consequences of disinformation, conspiracy theories, and false news stories that it has on the average citizen. So I was like, wow, that is super up our alley and really timely.
So we may have to do After Truth.
We might, yeah.
Did you also see, and this is like off the topic of Tristan for a minute, there is a movie called City of Joy that I want us to look at maybe doing.
I have not seen that, no.
Okay, we'll talk about it later. So yes, his app got bought by Google, and that was how he ended up working at Google Inbox.
Right.
So now he has this group called the Center for Humane Technology.
Mm-hmm.
And they were initially called Time Well Spent.
So he has I can't remember where I saw that, but I thought that was the name of his podcast. But his podcast is actually called Your Undivided Attention.
Oh, wow. I might have to look for it.
Yeah.
The Center for Humane Technology, I've actually got a tab open on my computer with their page. Their page is very dense. There is lots of material about how you can get active in changing the way that we consume social media and changing the way that we're manipulated by social media. You can donate to the Center for Humane Technology. It's a really, really intense website, and I didn't spend nearly as much time on it as I should have tonight.
Well, they do have a Twitter, at humantech_.
And their website is, let's see.
Humantech.com?
Humane Tech.
Humane Tech.
So Twitter is probably Humane Tech.
Yeah. Oh, it is.
Yeah. I thought it was very interesting. So he actually also coined this phrase that I had not heard prior to today called human downgrading.
Yes.
And
I think he mentioned that right at the end of Social Dilemma.
It talks about how the system, or it basically describes the system of what he calls mutually reinforcing harms.
Mm-hmm.
So addiction, distraction, isolation, polarization, and fake news. And he specifically points to how technology's business model to monetize our attention creates all of those things. Or at least, maybe creates is too strong a word, feeds all of those things.
And exploits them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was super interesting. He mentioned the slide deck that he did and then sent to a bunch of his colleagues at Google that kind of created a stir for a little bit and then, like, nothing, like crickets.
Yep. Poof.
And one of the things that apparently was said in that slide deck was that he called on Google, Apple, and Facebook to, quote, feel an enormous responsibility, end quote, to make sure that we don't spend the rest of our lives buried in our phones.
Yeah.
And he was an intern at Apple also.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I just, it's just, I don't get a Mark Zuckerberg vibe from him, which, but I still have, it's almost like he's too invested in this. Like,
really?
I always question people's motives when they're this invested in something. Either he, and I'm sure, he knows a lot more than we do because he's peeked behind the curtains. But no, I did not get a Mark Zuckerberg vibe from him. And I don't, the Mark Zuckerberg vibe is, like, I just look at Mark and I'm like, you're an android, but less fun.
The vibe that I get from him is that he's not genuine. That, like, he'll go in front of Congress and be like, I'm really sorry that people were manipulated by Facebook, and it's sorry, not sorry.
Yeah.
I get the vibe from Tristan Harris that he is very genuine and passionate in his desire to make sure that while we have this tech available, we use it responsibly and we're not manipulated by it.
I do too. I feel like maybe there should be, and maybe if I listen to his podcast, I would find out that there is, but I feel like there should be more of a conglomerate of them, because I feel like it's sort of like the whole, he has really, really good intentions, but they're his intentions. And
I don't think you're being fair. I mean, there's several people from Silicon Valley involved in the Center for Humane Technology.
Yeah, I don't know. I just always get kind of a culty vibe when it comes to somebody telling me what's good or bad for me.
I think you're personalizing a little bit. I do want to mention Jaron Lanier as our honorable mention for Housewives Hero. That's the guy who wrote...
yeah, I figured you would choose him.
So, he was super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like Tristan Harris was more compelling.
Yeah.
But Jaron Lanier apparently was a virtual reality pioneer. And he wrote a book called 10 Arguments for Deleting Your Social Media Accounts Right Now, which I have sent it to my Kindle. How meta is that? But I have not read it yet. And I also downloaded a book that I want to mention now before I forget it. So there was a book that was published last year called Zucked. And it was written by someone who was an early investor and early worker in and at Facebook and a friend of Mark Zuckerberg's. And I actually posted a link to an interview that he did with Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! On the Real Housewives page. It was very compelling. And I remember at the time thinking, oh man, I need to read that book. And today I actually went and bought it. And just in case anyone's interested, it is on sale for $4.99 on Amazon right now.
Not bad.
Totally worth watching the interview and seeing if you want to invest time in reading the book. I'm going to. This podcast is going to kill my book budget. Just because between this and Hail Satan, I've already bought like 3 books that were not on my Kindle a week ago. So... But yeah, I thought Jaron Lanier was very interesting. I do have to say the dreads were a little distracting.
Yeah, I kind of felt like he was a character out of The Matrix.
Yeah. Legit. Very legit. I do want to kind of finish up our talk about Tristan Harris with our call to action for the week. So these are some suggestions that were made by people in the film about how to change your interaction with social media. And I don't mean your as in you, Marnell. I mean your as in the collective us. So, number 1, turn off or reduce notifications on your phone.
And I already do. I don't have any push notifications for social media.
So I need to go and turn off my Instagram notifications. It's kind of funny that they're on because I look at Instagram maybe every 3 weeks.
I feel like I look at Instagram less than that. The only time I look at Instagram is when we're podcasting.
For the podcast.
Yep.
And I did join Noom, so I have notifications for Noom, and then I have notifications for messages. But that's... And there are a couple of other things that I have notifications for, but they're like apps that I don't even look at. So, yeah.
Rosie now notifies me if...
Oh, God, that's really funny.
If she's emptying her bin or if she's stuck or something.
Speaking of which, Rosie, do you love her? Speaking of tech.
She hasn't quite figured out the house yet. But yeah, I'm digging it. I just figured out, like, the first time I ran her, I was like,
she's the Robovac, by the way, in case anybody needs to know.
She's my Roomba. She's my Rosie Jetson. She vacuums my house for me. But I don't know what I was thinking, but when I first turned the Rosie on, I was like, oh my God, that's super loud. Yeah, Marnell, vacuums are loud. I don't know what I expected. Like, I expected, like, this whisper quiet.
Oh my God, that's so funny. I don't think it's particularly loud, but I don't know.
So I have an S9, and there's actually 2 settings on the S9, and one is for, like, a high nap
for normal
carpet.
Humans.
One is for high nap carpet, and the other one is better on hardwood. And today I figured out the setting to turn it onto hardwood, and I'm like, oh, that's like, that takes away like 2/3 of the noise. So yeah.
Okay, so going back to our call to actions, so now you know what notifications Marnell and I get. Um, the second was uninstall social media and news apps that are wasting time. I am definitely going to have to talk about that more in my confessions.
I was going to say, I don't think I have any. Well, I mean, I have plenty that waste my time.
Dude,
But...
I'm calling you out about TikTok.
Oh, yeah. Heck yeah, TikTok. But
All
it's
right.
shiny new
God.
social media. I'm sure I will get bored with it.
So it totally gives you that dopamine hit that they talked about in the documentary.
But all I'm saying is, who doesn't need a little dopamine right now?
Oh my God. All right. Number 3, use a search engine that doesn't store your search history. And this, I actually had this conversation with my friend Todd a little over a week ago. He recommended DuckDuckGo. So duck like the animal twice and the word go. And it actually is something that you can tack on to Chrome or Firefox. He works in IT, and his recommendation for safest browser and then adding that extra level of privacy was Firefox with DuckDuckGo. So that's what I'm doing now for any searches.
Did you Google it?
What do you mean, did I Google it?
Did you Google DuckDuckGo to get to it?
Oh, I did, and then I know, but now I don't use Google anymore. I use DuckDuckGo. So they saw that one. That's the last hit that Google's gonna get from me, because I even put DuckDuckGo on my phone.
Oh, that's funny.
So not that I do any searches that anyone really is going to care about, other than my recent excessive searches for the Satanic Temple. And then number 4 is use browser extensions to block recommendations. I have not added any browser extensions yet. I'll have to do some research on that. Number 5, fact check before sharing. I am definitely bad about that. I need to be more careful about that. Number 6, obtain sources of information with different perspectives, including those you disagree with. I am going to be the first person to say I am bad about that, too.
And I've mentioned it on the show before, where I will preface something that I say by the fact that my analytics are definitely things that I want to see. You know, I try and like other sources and other media people that maybe don't have the same opinion as me, but like, I think a lot of them are wackadoo, you know?
Which kind of goes to, and I mean, I feel the same way you do, but it goes to what they talked about in terms of one of the harms being polarization.
Right.
You know, not being able to see anybody from the opposite side as anything other than nut jobs.
Right.
You know?
Right. But and if I were standing on the other side looking at some of the people that I wasn't a big Jeffrey Toobin fan, but I'm sure that they're pointing over at our side going, well, look at that wackadoo, you know?
So, I'm not going to lie. I have consumed plenty of media that Jeffrey Toobin has put out there, and yuck, man. I feel a little bit betrayed.
I have too, but I couldn't name one. It's not like that he had a show that I watched or anything.
But he's been a legal consultant on so many different news programs that I've watched. Yeah. So he has consumed a lot of headspace. All right, the very last thing in the call to action from the movie was do not give devices to children. No screen time. So this is very interesting because even the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends no more than an hour of screen time a day for kids.
So what do they define as screen time? Does it actually mean time in front of a screen, or does it mean time with, I would say, non-beneficial time with screen? I
honestly think we're probably going to have to redefine what screen time is now that we are doing so much online schooling with the pandemic.
Right.
But screen time previously was like being on a phone, playing games, watching TV, playing on the computer. I mean, screen time is screen time anytime you're sitting in front of a screen.
But in my lifetime, we have gone from the TV will rot your brain to putting baby Einstein videos on for your toddler so that they learn about,
So
cowgirls move.
there are plenty of people who are going to argue that even baby Einstein is bad screen time. You
And
know,
I don't have children, so I have zero argument when it comes to that. Like I don't raise your children. I don't know what's best for your children because, I can't uh I can't contribute anything to that. Like that I'm asking the question is I mean, there's plenty of stuff out there. I mean, like, okay, for instance, TikTok taught me how to fix a nail hole in my tire. There are beneficial things out there, and that's actually one thing that they talked about in the movie is that social media can be a tool.
okay, but hold on.
Okay.
You are kind of taking things off on a totally different train of thought. We're talking about not giving devices to kids,
Right.
versus adults using things like, gosh, I'm going to YouTube how to unplug my vacuum.
Yeah.
Or gosh, I'm going to YouTube how to fix that nail hole in my tire. Very different. Social
there's
media
apps out there
absolutely
for children.
can be a tool. But,
There.
all right, I'm going to put on my ranty panties.
Okay.
So, this is actually something that I had in Housewives Weekly, but this is also something that I see regularly in clinic and regularly when I am dealing with children of friends. Devices are bad for kids. I don't know that I'm going to quite go to the place where I say don't give devices to children, 0 screen time, but I had a 13-year-old sit in clinic and not only ignore me while I'm trying to conduct a well child with him so he can be on his phone, but after being told twice to get off his phone by his parent, got back on his phone.
Oh my Lord.
And the parent looked at me and was like, sheesh, what can you do? And I'm like, you can suck it up and take his phone away for the 45 minutes that he's in clinic with me today.
Yeah. So I am totally in favor of I don't have a lot of opinion on how to deal with very young children and their screen time. Because I'm of the agreement of like little kids shouldn't have screens. Like when they get to like 14, 15, 16, I mean, I feel like kids are safer having a phone.
Okay, I haven't taken my ranty panties off yet. So,
but I do agree with you.
Kids are safer having a phone.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, a teenager should have a phone that he or she can use to call a trusted adult. I'm not even going to say parent, a trusted adult if they're in trouble. But here's just some basic information from the Mayo Clinic. This is so we were talking about a meta-analysis earlier. This is a meta-analysis of some other research that Mayo Clinic put together. So Pew did some research on 13 to 17-year-olds. 45% of the kids that they interviewed said they were online almost constantly. 97% of the kids that they interviewed have social media accounts. And there were several studies that linked poor mental health outcomes and poor well-being to 3 or more hours of social media a day. There are several studies that show an increase in depression, anxiety, and sleep problems in teens who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media. I mean, this is not good. And I see it in my friends' kids. They don't want to interact. They want to sit on their phones.
I was going to say, I want to say that 3 hours of screen time is excessive, but I'm also thinking of like sitting down for 3 hours with screen time. I'm not because it all adds up,
right.
The
and
20 minutes you spend in the morning, the 20 minutes at lunch,
here's the deal. Even the kids of that addiction medicine specialist that they interviewed in the movie were like, oh, I spent a half an hour tops. And it's like, no, you're averaging like 2.5 to 3 hours a day.
Yeah.
And their mom is intensely aware of addiction, intensely aware of dopamine pathways, argues with them about it, and they're still spending almost 3 hours on social media daily.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. I think that we need to be a lot more thoughtful about how we engage our children with devices. I see people all the time, every frickin' day I'm in clinic. They've got a noisy toddler with them. They hand their phone to their toddler and entertain their toddler that way while they're conducting their visit with me.
Oh, wow.
Every day.
I've seen that too. And okay, I have to admit, half of me is like, oh, thank God they got the kid to shut up, but the other half of me is like, that's probably bad on a developing brain.
Hey, I'm not going to lie. It's really hard to conduct a healthcare visit with a parent when their child is flying around the room like a maniac. I literally, several months ago, picked up one of 2 horrible children that were in clinic with their mother and said, I'm not putting you down until you stop hitting your mother and apologize.
Oh. Yeah, you're better with kids than I am.
But the other thing is, placating that kid with a phone is not making that situation any better.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that makes me think, the Mayo Clinic studies makes me think that maybe we should be treating this like some sort of substance abuse that, like drugs or alcohol, where, their brains are still developing. Maybe there should be something, whether it's the parents saying it or something, to limit exposure prior to, late teens, early 20s.
Well, and so here's the other problem, though, and I see this a lot, and this is the parent who hands the phone to the toddler to placate the toddler. We have parents who have limited internal and external resources. They don't have the emotional resources to deal with a frustrating and frustrated toddler.
Right.
They don't have the material resources to have a babysitter for the hour and a half that they're going to take out of their day to come and have a clinic visit with me.
Well, and I don't want to say that they have a limited capacity themselves for dealing with
that's what I'm saying about
situations.
Internal resources. I mean, they just don't have the internal resources. They don't have the family connections to have family members who are willing to take that kid for the hour and a half a day. I mean, we have a generation of parents who have limited internal and external resources who are trying to parent. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I get it. I get where the handing the phone to the toddler comes from. I just think it's incredibly damaging. Yeah. I don't have a great answer. I mean, I think that overall our country is really sick and on a ventilator right now. I don't have a great answer, but I see this all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I mean, especially just given how much I'm struggling with my own life right now. Would I have the internal resources or external resources to parent any better than these folks do? Probably not. That's part of the reason I decided not to have kids.
Have children. Yep. Ditto. I saw what being a single mother was like.
Yeah.
And I saw that even a lot of people who are married are single parents. Because the other spouse, and I'm not just going to pick on men, the other spouse doesn't engage enough with the family or take enough responsibility in familial duties or household duties or things like that. And I was just like, I'm not signing up for that.
I felt the same way.
Yep.
Okay, ranty panties are off. Not promising that there are any other panties back on. We're not going there.
I definitely agree with you. And, just having watched the dramatization in the movie, I probably would have put some sort of limitation, whether it's because, there's the capacity for that. You can put limitations on, a phone that's on your plan. You can limit the amount of time somebody spends on an app. You can limit the apps. You can limit, the amount of data. There are ways you can monitor things. So not that every parent has time to monitor their, 1, 2, 3 children's time that they spend on screens, but there's some ways that you can mitigate some damage.
And I think so too. And I think honestly that when we look at people like Tristan Harris and Jaron Lanier, maybe not quite so much because he's advocating getting rid of social media altogether, but definitely Tristan Harris and who was the other guy? Tim Kendall, I think his name was. The guy from, Tim Kendall. He was the guy who was the Pinterest CEO. I actually really liked him a lot.
Okay, but Pinterest isn't that nefarious.
Okay,
I'm just
that may be
addicted to Pinterest.
That may be true for you. That may not be true for everybody. Cocaine is not that nefarious for you. That's not true for everybody.
I just see Pinterest as like a housewife DIY mommer. I'm gonna make Halloween decorations type.
Okay, you completely destroyed what I was gonna say about him. I don't even remember.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just okay.
I think what I was gonna say is that both he and Tristan Harris were basically like, we're not advocating completely getting rid of all of this tech. We're advocating making it better, and we're advocating making it less manipulative.
Okay.
Although he did say he does not give his kids any screen time.
I think that it was interesting that almost all of the people that were interviewed said that they either don't give their kids any screen time or they limit their children's the age and the amount that they're allowed to have screen time.
Again, American Academy of Pediatrics, which covers 0 to 18 hour of screen time a day.
Well, and I would just like to say that, these people have seen behind the curtain and they're raising their children to not have social media. So,
but to be fair to all of the parents that I was just harshing on a minute ago, these people that were interviewed for this film, most of them probably still have a ton of stock from the companies that they left and are probably pretty well heeled. They probably don't they don't have to worry about things like, can I get a babysitter so I can go to my doctor's appointment?
Right.
Do I take my toddler with me? Oh no, my toddler's flying off the walls. Here's my phone.
Right.
That's not the life that these people are living. So I have to be fair and say that. And that's what I mean about internal and external resources.
Right.
Okay, so the news was weird. Like, there was a little bit of news kind of reviewing this movie. So I kind of went down a little different tack with Housewives Weekly. There was a Bloomberg interview, fairly recent. It featured Tristan Harris, Tim Kendall, the Pinterest person, and then Sophia Noble, who apparently was also in the film, but I don't remember how she was associated with the tech community. And they basically all said that they sincerely believe that Trump would not have been elected had he not had a social media presence. And
it was a lot of free advertising.
Well, so Tristan Harris actually said his name hacked the news feed. And he said that there literally was a pattern matching signal so that the news AIs realized that the name Trump, regardless of whether it was featured in a positive or negative context, would immediately get a hit, would immediately get engagement. So everything that had the word Trump in it got pushed up to the top of the algorithms.
Wow.
Which I thought was super, super interesting and really scary. Yeah. And all three of them agreed that social media overall, not just talking about American politics, was responsible for the rise of authoritarianism on the planet and for the destruction of democracies on the planet.
Yeah. And the last episode we talked about how fundamentalism is bad in any form. And I feel like it's funny, my massage therapist and I were actually just talking about this today. I went and visited the Oklahoma City Memorial, and anytime I see any of the extremism in the news, I have a tendency to think of McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber. And I was like, back then, people were radicalized via newsletter, via snail mail. And now it is at the click of a button.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's frightening.
I mean, look, you and I were radicalized by a documentary about the Satanic Temple.
To be fair, I think I was radical
before then. Yeah.
I just found my people.
So another thing that I ran across when I was looking at news about the social dilemma was a reference to the movie The Great Hack, which was a 2019 Netflix documentary. Do you remember the Cambridge Analytica scandal?
I do.
So I, of course, focused on it at the time, and I seem to remember that Steve Bannon was wrapped up in all of it. I think he owned some stock in Cambridge Analytica, if I remember correctly. But basically, Cambridge Analytica and Facebook had this involvement where Cambridge Analytica harvested the data of about 30 million Facebook users and then monetized it to be used in political advertising. So I thought, how quickly that scandal faded away. And maybe I need to go back and watch that movie.
I was just going to say, I didn't remember the Cambridge Analytica scandal until you said something, and of course the movie. And if you had asked me what exactly it was about, I couldn't remember.
I actually had to do some further reading. I mean, when I clicked on the thing about the Great Hack, I was like, okay, I remember Cambridge Analytica. I remember it was bad. I remember that Steve Bannon was involved. I don't remember anything beyond that.
Yeah.
So Jeff Orlowski, the writer and director of this film, was on Fox News, actually, and he said that he really strongly believes that any country, not just Iran and Russia, which are being pointed to right now, could potentially meddle with our election. And I loved this quote. He said, "We have created a weapon of mass misinformation that can be deployed on our soil."
Mm-hmm.
So, he's specifically talking about how, like, Twitter and Facebook can be perverted to interfere with a democratic election.
Yeah.
The last thing I had was the stuff from Mayo Clinic, and I did do some Googling just to look for professional papers about teen mental health and social media use, but I ended up not getting a chance to read all of the papers that were out there. There was one on the National Institutes of Health that I'm probably going to go back and take a look at. So
one of the things as we podcast tonight that is trending on Twitter is the National Guard has been called in.
Right, you mentioned that.
Yes, to thwart cyber attacks in Louisiana. And so I haven't, because we started podcasting right as this was kind of breaking. I haven't really read it, but you and I were talking about how in the world is the National Guard going to help with cyber attacks?
So do you still have it open? Can you click on it? Because I'm curious to know what the National Guard is going to do in that context. I just don't understand.
So it looks like it's a Reuters article, and it looks like it's got Russia and North Korea involved in trying to hack local governments for the 2020 election. And hackers are infecting government offices with types of malware known as ransomware. It locks up a system and demands payment to regain access. And the actual... I don't know if you've done any reading or anything on ransomware. Is it generally works. So somebody will click on a link and it will infect the system, your systems, and you'll get a message saying that you have to, pay this amount of money, and it's usually in like Bitcoin. And you will be able to regain access to your computer. Well, if you do it, they will give you access back to your computer, because that's how ransomware works. And if people find out that if they pay the money and you don't get your stuff back, people will stop paying the money. So ransomware cyber attacks are generally successful, but there's a lot of places who refuse to pay the ransomware, and then they don't get their stuff back.
I was just going to say, then what happens?
Right.
I mean, like, especially if you're looking at stuff that's important to our election getting locked up.
Well, okay, so there's a, for instance, one of the other housewives, where she worked got hit with a ransomware, but they were actually already in the process of changing systems. So all of their stuff was already had rolled over to a new system. So it's the old system that got ransomwared. And so they were like, keep it, So didn't work out for the ransomware guys in that situation, but you pretty much have to rebuild from scratch. I mean, everything is lost unless you had some sort of backup. Which is true with any computer. If you have
I got hacked and somebody was using my email to send out spam, and I didn't even realize it. And I was like, why won't my email download? What's going on? And I called my provider, and they were like, if you do this again, you can't have service with us anymore. And I was like, what?
There was actually a department with the state of Alaska who, it wasn't a hack. It just happened to be that their servers died, and they hadn't had any backup. And they actually wound up sending their hard drives to a company in California that actually specializes in rebuilding information from, damaged hard drives, whether it's damaged in a fire or damaged, by flood or things like that. Or, of course, if.
You mean Hunter Biden could have gotten his computer worked on in California? Huh? No. Right? Who's watching Borat later on tonight?
We are. We should have a watch party. They were able to sort of bring a lot of the stuff back. A lot of the stuff came back basically in just vomits of information. It was you just know that this is a Word doc, and the Word doc in there is whatever it was, but it has no title or anything. So you have to open every single Word doc, Excel doc, you have to open everything and figure out what it is and rename it and resave it to wherever, it was a huge, arduous task. And now, of course, everything is backed up with, multiple redundancies, but ransomware isn't always the end of the world, unless maybe you're talking about an election. I still don't know how the National Guard is supposed to be helping. But, it really wouldn't shock me if there is some sort of branch of the National Guard that sort of specializes in I don't want to say cybersecurity, but computers, I guess.
I don't know. I have mixed trust about that whole issue. All right. Anything for Housewives housekeeping? Anything you want to talk about that's not related to this movie, that's not related to social media, that's not related to me harshing on you for your use of TikTok?
So I guess maybe Rosie's app installation was unduly arduous.
Really? Mine was super easy.
Yeah, I don't know what was up with mine. I think probably part of mine was I have my location services turned on my phone, but I actually had to go into the app itself and turn it on. I just assumed because I had location services on, like it
Do
would
you,
default.
do you have an Apple or do you have an Android?
I have an Android.
There you go. There's your problem right there.
Oh, my phone's not idiot proof, apparently.
Right? And mine is, thank God. Well, my housekeeping is, I'm not sure I don't have the COVID. It's totally one of those things now, 2020, working in healthcare. I'm achy. I have a sore throat. My ears hurt. Do I just have a cold or do I have COVID? I don't know. If I'm still sick on Monday, I'm going to have to call work and get a COVID test.
Are you running a fever?
I'm not running a fever. But that doesn't mean anything either because
it doesn't.
everybody has different symptoms.
Yes,
and I've had
yes,
so
they
many
do.
patients who have been asymptomatic.
So, and this doesn't sound like a lot to the rest of the world, but considering the lack of population density in Alaska, we had a record number of new cases today.
I
And by
believe
a
it was
record number,
387.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is like almost twice what we normally get in a day.
Well,
So,
and I'm going to tell you, we had a lot of positive results in our testing at our clinic this week. And, by a lot, I mean more than like one. But, again, this is Alaska. But I
right.
mean, I'm at a point now where I am like, do I even? So, I mean, there are people that I have invitations to spend the holidays with. Do I do it?
No,
I'm not sure.
nope. I,
I mean, I'm really at a point where I'm like, I don't even want to leave my house.
yep. That's why I get Instacart. That's why I still telework every once
I
in a while.
can't telework.
I know. But I mean, every once in a while I have I feel like I want to go into my office and work. I mean, it's really no difference other than the social aspect, but I'm like, I'm a really severe asthmatic. If I get COVID, I will be hospitalized. I mean, there's really just not going to be a mild case of COVID for me, and I fully expect in the next year for pretty much most of us to get COVID at some point or another. And so, yeah, it's scary. And I would call you said that you had two comorbidities last night, but I would put you in the, young and healthy category as far as,
You know what? I'm almost 50 and I'm carrying more weight than I should. Both of those things put me at risk.
you're a non-smoker, you're not.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise I'm pretty healthy. I don't
Yeah.
have any metabolic issues. I'm
Yep.
not diabetic. My cholesterol's fine. I don't have high blood pressure. But I have 2 risk factors right off the bat.
Yeah.
And 3 if you count the fact that I work in a high-risk profession.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ugh. All right. On to something happier. So I have gotten some positive feedback from the friends that have listened to our first episode thus far. It is still not on iTunes. I messaged Rob again today and he resubmitted it to iTunes. So hopefully it's going to be up and running here shortly. I will post on our Facebook page, social media, when when it does go live on iTunes. This one I'm going to go ahead and post anyway, and same thing. I mean, hopefully iTunes will be active before it hits. But yeah, so we haven't had tons of listens, but we've gotten some good reviews. I'm hoping we get it out there a little more once it is accessible on iTunes.
Yeah. You have to tell your barista to listen.
Oh, I gave her the direct download link.
Okay.
It's just, I think she's waiting for it to be on iTunes as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thanks to her for the recommendation.
Right,
of Hail
totally
Satan.
thanks to her.
Except now everything has to measure up to Hail Satan.
Right, completely. And I'm waiting for another Trump rally so I can give them the Hail Satan hand signal, you know? Although, and, you know, since I don't think this is entirely explicit, so I don't think I have to edit this out, but you've seen the meme that shows that the giant banners can be defaced to read "I pump penis."
Yes.
So every time I see one of those giant banners flying, I think that, and it does soothe me a little bit.
Oh,
Jeffrey Toobin.
So social media related, and I know how much you love me talking about TikTok, but I truly believe those kids will save the world.
Good Lord, I hope so.
So there's a guy who almost his entire TikTok channel is dedicated to how to troll the Trump campaign.
Oh, I've heard about him.
Yes, and one of the ways is right now any campaign for president is spending a ton of money in this last week or two of the election cycle. And to get your ad at the top to be the top link of Google, you pay a certain amount of money depending on the analytics. And right now the Trump campaign is spending $33 per click on having Trump 2020 campaign his campaign website at the top of Google's algorithm for the ad. So if you Google Trump 2020 and you click on that top ad, the Trump campaign gets charged $33. There's another girl on TikTok who orders Trump signs, the Trump yard signs, and of course they're sent to you for free. And she actually uses them as canvas for her art.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
So she's getting free canvas and she's costing the Trump campaign however much yard signs cost.
Oh, so, and I do have to say, I saw the funniest suggestion. So I've had lots of friends who are getting their Harris Biden yard signs stolen.
Yep.
So coat them in Vaseline and glitter.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we've had what people thought was a rash of that happening, but here in Juneau, we have very strict laws against signage close to our highways and road system. And so the Juneau city streets guys, actually somebody had posted that their signs were stolen, and the city streets guys were like, they got on Facebook and were like, nope, that was us. They weren't actually stolen. They were confiscated because they were too close to the road. And of course everyone's like, well, it's just this side's signs that you're taking down. And so they had to post a bunch of pictures showing all of the yard signs that they had confiscated, including those giant like house size ones.
Gee, I know somebody who's got at least one of those.
They're like, nope, it's not any one side or one candidate. We, take them all. And, they, of course, always, repost the laws about signage and how close it can be to a road system. But so it could possibly not be their signs actually getting stolen. It could be them getting confiscated because of zoning issues.
I know that at least some of my friends have had them maliciously stolen.
Yeah. So did you see the one that somebody had taped or glued or whatever razor blades to the bottom of? So when you went to pull it up, it cut the person's hand?
I saw that too. And I like the glitter and Vaseline thing better.
Me too.
Because first do no harm.
Right.
All right, let's get into our summer, winter, and road construction because we almost have reached the length of the documentary we're talking about.
Of course.
So go ahead.
So my summer, my good was when they started out the documentary, it pointed out of all the good that social media has brought us. And, they didn't talk a lot about that throughout the documentary, but I really liked that they pointed out that, they talked about how it's a tool, but unfortunately has become a non-passive tool. But, social media has reunited families. It's found organ donors for people in need. It has raised a lot of money for charities, and it has caused a lot of social uprising for the good. I mean, Twitter was basically responsible for the Arab Spring, so it's a double-edged sword. I mean, we see how much it can do bad in inciting violence at peaceful protests when you have people who go there just to do that. But I also I wouldn't want to be like China, where they crack down on their social media posts in order to keep their people oppressed. So I just like that they pointed out that they can be used for good. We're just human, and we tend to use crap for evil.
We tend to screw things up.
Right? It's only human. So that was my summer. That was my good.
So my summer was kind of small, and it also had a caveat of but what to it as well. But for me, it was heartening to see all of these young execs be like, peace out. This is really unhealthy, and we have to figure out a way to make this better.
But after I made my money.
That's one of the caveats. And the other caveat was, so what are they doing now? Because, I mean, I get what Tristan Harris is doing now.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what the other people who ducked out are doing. And, part of that's on me for not digging and finding out. But I'm like, and how are you using your powers for good?
So I will have to mention that the podcast that Tristan has, Your Undivided Attention, his co-host on that podcast is somebody else that we saw on the Social Dilemma. His name was Asa Raskin.
Oh, he's one of the co-founders of the Center for Humane Technology.
Yep. So, yeah. So those two guys are doing something.
I'm going to put that podcast on my feed right now. You said it's called Your Undivided Attention?
Yep, that's what I said.
Which is so funny to, again, I think it's just completely meta to be like, social media is really bad, so here's our podcast about it.
I am a child of news sound bites. I mean, if you can't condense it into a minute or less, I've probably stopped paying attention.
Oh my God, really?
No. I mean, I listen to, hours and hours of podcasts. I'm behind on them because there are just so many of them. But I mean, I remember when I would watch a news program on, the 10 o'clock news or whatever, when I lived in Washington, because they have real news there. We don't have real news here.
Right.
Like Cairo or King 5 or something. And they would literally have to say, and we'll be back in 60 seconds with the weather. They would have to tell you exactly how long the commercials were, because people's attention spans were so short that if you had to wait 2 minutes, if you didn't know exactly that it was going to be 60 seconds, so, MTV generation. All right.
All right. What was your winter?
My bad, which I have to say, it is practically winter here. It is bitter cold.
It is winter here. There was snow on the ground last weekend, and it was spitting snow today.
Yep. We had snow last weekend. We had snow in the morning, and then by the afternoon, you could mow your lawn. But it's not like crisp cold like October usually is here. Like we usually have like Oktoberfest, like AK Oktoberfest. And it's outside because it's crisp, and we all get to wear our hoodies and stuff like that. And no, it is so cold right now. It's awful. So winter, bad. The scariest thing I think that they said in this, and it goes back to, I don't think I'm as affected by social media myself, but the scariest thing they said is it affects you even if you don't use it. And that is entirely true, because social media has an effect on the populace, you know, and they pointed out Pizzagate and things like that, and
Oh my God.
hacking the election and all this stuff. Like we are reliant upon the people around us, you know, and that's terrifying that people are so easily manipulated that, you know, it could crash the economy, it could ruin democracy, it could destroy civilization, you know, like we could not do stuff about climate change because people think it's a hoax, and like it's just terrifying that we are like reliant on, and I'm sorry, but the dumbest 10% of the population.
There was a lot in this movie that terrified me, which we'll get into in our bycatch.
It affects you even if you don't use it. And I had never thought of that before. Like, even if I stopped using social media, even if I was like, you know what, it is a problem, I waste too much time, you know, I could be doing a whole lot of other stuff, it doesn't help the other people who are being manipulated by it. That's the scariest thing that was said in this to me. Oh. So what was your bad? What was your winter?
So my winter was actually the conceit of the fictional family. I was really torn by whether or not it was necessary. Initially, it was kind of irritating. I was like, I just need a documentary. I don't need you to tell me a pretty little story. I don't need you to show me with the fake family. I get it. You can tell me the straight up facts in the documentary. So I think I'm falling on the side of it was a distraction and a conceit that I didn't need because I'm smarter than that.
I kind of liked it, and I think probably part of the reason why I liked it was there were some faces that I actually recognized from other shows that I watched.
Okay,
so.
The kid who couldn't go without his phone. Did I recognize him from somewhere?
You did. So let me... his name is Skylar Gonzado. That's how I'm saying.
Oh yeah, I completely recognize that.
Yeah. So, he was in The Amazing Spider-Man. He was in Night at the Museum. Let's see, The Santa Clarita Diet.
Oh,
did you watch that?
I recognize him from The Santa Clarita Diet. Okay.
Okay. I was going to say, I don't think you watched the movie Vacation, because I don't even think I watched the movie Vacation.
No, did not.
Yeah.
0 stars, very bad. Do not recommend. I don't know. That's not true. I didn't watch it, so I can't say that.
He was the best friend in Santa Clarita Diet.
That's right. That is totally where I recognize him from.
Yep.
All right. So I guess that kind of takes us to our road construction, which I want to remind people is frustrating and irritating, but totally necessary. So it can be either good or bad.
Right. So I kind of liked the woman who pointed out, I liked that she pointed out that yes, this can be, and she said outlawed. I'm going to say regulated. This can be regulated. She said outlawed because she used the examples of, we've outlawed the organ trade, we've outlawed slavery, things like that. Anything that is destructive to society, we have the ability to say that that is not right and we should not be doing that, and we make laws. And so that kind of gave me a little hope to point that out, because I'm like how do you regulate this without becoming, communist or fascist or any of the ists? where, we look at other countries who have outlawed social media, and, we have this little thing in the US called the First Amendment. And how do you get around that? But it's the whole, I guess you can't yell fire in a theater because, you're responsible for your consequence. You have to face the consequences of your actions. But so that kind of gave me hope that I was like, okay, like humans have done some things before that have made things better, so maybe.
So it was pretty interesting when I was reading that article about Jeff Orlowski. Did I totally blow his name? Yeah, no, Jeff Orlowski, the writer-director, appearing on Fox and saying that, any country could mess up the election and that we have this weapon of mass misinformation. I can't remember if he was commenting on another person from the documentary or if someone was commenting on his comments, so bear with me, but it was basically like, I don't think it's as bad as all that. I don't think we're going to see complete and utter destruction of our democracy overnight, but I think we're going to continue to go down this road unless we make some meaningful change. So there, I thought there was some hope in that.
Yeah.
All right. So my road construction, and this is totally going to me bitching at you about TikTok because it really did make me think about my own stuff with social media. And here's the honest truth. I mean, true confession times. So my trigger is definitely Facebook. Twitter somewhat, but definitely Facebook. I spend way too much time on Facebook. And I'm not sure that I could delete it. I've tried deleting it off of my phone before. I've actually gone several weeks without it being on my phone. And then I put it back on. And then I'm like, oh, I'll just leave Messenger on my phone in case someone needs to send me a message during the day. And then I end up putting the whole app back on. And I just, I definitely have a Facebook problem. But it goes back to what I was saying earlier about dilemma. And I'm not making excuses for being totally over consuming Facebook, but there are truly people in my life that I'm not sure how I would stay in touch with them any other way. I mean, right. Case in point, all of the podcasters that we've met virtually that I hope that we meet someday as human to human.
Right.
I don't know how I would stay in touch with them if I wasn't on Facebook.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it's not like, it's not even just the FOMO. It's not even the fear of missing out. They did point out in the movie that, kids are caught up in this. They feel isolated if they don't have social media because everyone's talking about the thing on social media or, just you are kind of on an island without it. And
and I am definitely that person who is like, did I get any likes on that post, and I'm gonna refresh this. And I mean, what they talked about in terms of that motion of swiping down and seeing your screen refresh on your phone being truly something that gives you a rush of dopamine.
Yeah.
Just like pulling the handle of a slot machine in Vegas.
Yeah.
I mean, I am definitely that person, and it does not feel good to admit that.
And I find that I use the different social medias in different ways. So Facebook is mostly just for friends and family and podcasters who I consider friends. But like, I don't follow a lot of news. I don't follow a lot of celebrities. In fact, I don't think I follow any on Facebook. Twitter, on the other hand, is like I follow news and celebrities. I don't have a whole lot of use for Instagram because I'm just like, it's pretty much just pictures, and I don't have Snapchat because I don't get Snapchat at all. Like, I do not understand it. Like, yeah. TikTok. I did not install TikTok until TikTok was going to be banned. And at that point it was a sort of a protest. And we thought the TikTok was really just a lot of like people doing dance challenges and like that kind of thing. But I have found that it is so much more. Do not get me wrong. I waste a lot of time on TikTok for 1 minute videos. So these videos are only allowed to be 1 minute long, and some of them are less than that. And 2.5 hours can blow by before I know it. So, but that's 2.5 hours I could, would have been watching a movie or something. So,
Well, and for me, so, going back to the whole True Confessions, I spend way too much time on Facebook thing. This movie really got me thinking about that's 2.5 hours of time I could be doing something completely productive with.
I was going to say constructive, yeah.
Like exercising, like going up and spending time with the horses, even though I'm not sure I want to spend time with the humans because I don't want to make them sick and I don't want to get sick.
Yeah.
Knitting, spinning.
Yeah.
I mean, all of those are things that I could be doing that I'm not doing because I'm wasting too much time on Facebook.
Yep. I'm right there with you. There have been times where I'm like, oh my God, it's 11:30. I should have been sleeping for hours, And again, like I said, TikTok is the shiny new social media for me, so hopefully I get bored of it soon. But yeah, I do spend a lot of time, and that's the thing is I feel like the time that I used to spend on all my other social medias, I'm spending on TikTok now. So I'm like, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
It still doesn't make it okay or
No,
harmless.
it doesn't. But I'm only accountable to me, so.
Well, and I mean, I'm only accountable to me, and like you, my animals are fed, my house is relatively clean, it's pretty small, so it's hard for it not to be clean. The litter box gets emptied on a regular basis. I mean, but I'm only responsible to me in that context, but I'm responsible to humanity in a bigger context, and I'm responsible to me in a bigger context too. There are things I could be doing for self-care that I'm not doing because I'm spending time on social media because I'm addicted.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And, I'm going to make the devil's advocate argument, and I don't truly believe this, so before you get on my case, I'm just going to preface it by saying it's the devil's advocate argument, of that it is 2020. We are living in the time of COVID. There has been a lot of bad crap in our life otherwise, especially this year. Don't get too hard on yourself for just wanting to have a little bit of dopamine.
Well, but here's the thing. All of those other things release dopamine as well. I know you're being the devil's advocate, but all of those other things, meditation, exercise, interacting with, if it's not humans, with other animals in a pleasant way. I mean, all of those things release dopamine.
But if you don't have the energy for those things, I'm just saying, get your endorphins kick any way you can. Any safe or legal way.
I think the devil has plenty of advocates. Oh, all right. This takes us soundly into our bycatch.
Bycatch is all other.
So I am going to say that hearing this described as the age of surveillance capitalism, and just like thinking about each of us who consumes whatever degree of social media we do, thinking about us as the product to be sold, not as the consumer, but as the product, that's really scary.
It is.
And the other thing that really scared me, and I think this is probably the most haunting image from the whole film, is the description of literal banks of computers filling huge rooms in Silicon Valley. I mean, that is right out of the Matrix. I was completely having Terminator and Matrix running through my head the whole time I was watching this, and I was thinking, here we are in stuff that was fiction 20, 30 years ago.
Yep.
Well, probably even longer with the Terminator, actually, but...
Just about every dystopian AI nightmare starts out with the AI learning so much about us that it thinks that it can take care of us better than we can ourselves, and it goes terribly wrong. In all practicality, we all know that everything, like they said, everything that you are doing is watched, followed, and measured. And I've always joked about, like, people getting caught for murdering their spouses because they swiped their club card for buying the tarp and shovel, to save $5. But it's true. I mean, every single thing that you do is stored somewhere. If they can track it or measure it, it is stored somewhere about you.
And honestly, I have said before, I understand that and I'm okay with it. But I'm a little less okay with it tonight.
The only way that I am okay with it is that it is being done to everybody, and who cares about me? Like, in all honesty, is there really somebody that's going, is my file so interesting that some dude is sitting there somewhere going through people's files and going, yeah, I'm going to monitor her like the No, I'm not that interesting.
So I do have to say, and I know that we've joked about this, but I still kind of get it, but don't get it. It does freak me out when I talk about something and then all of a sudden I'm getting ads for it. And it really truly does happen. Like, I will talk about something and all of a sudden there's an ad for that on my Facebook feed, or there's an ad for that in the next time I open up Amazon,
What really gets me is when I'm not sure if I've ever talked about it, but I've thought about it. Like, it knows me so well that it knows what I'm going to want.
The AI is so good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's something just recently did that, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it was. It was something on Amazon where I was like, I'm pretty sure I didn't say that out loud.
That was actually the other thing that really freaked me out, speaking of AI, which was when they were like, the AIs have gotten so good and now we've taken them and pointed them back at ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
That felt very Terminator to me.
I mean, there are hypotheses that we are just living in a simulation. We really could be living in the Matrix.
I'm less certain that is not true.
The thing that really got me about this, and I kind of knew it, but they cited some specific percentages. You and I talked about earlier the Snapchat dysmorphia, where women are now having plastic surgery.
Yeah, I really honestly did not know that Snapchat dysmorphia was a thing.
So I had heard it before, but the thing that really, really got me, and I always say that I am very, very glad that I was a teenager before social media, because I'm not sure I could handle it. Cyberbullying, that scares the crap out of me. But the depression and anxiety and cutting increase from teens and preteens, and the suicide rate in preteens being up 150% after 2011. I literally just got chills. Like, that's terrible. I mean, teen suicide has always been a really big issue, but to know that, social media is actively adding to it,
I would like to see some figures about adults. I would, because I think that we are just as well, maybe that's not quite true. I think we're pretty strongly impacted as well.
I also think so. There was a study that I heard of a couple of years ago that talked about the bulimia and anorexia rates among women in their late 20s to early 50s on the rise.
Wow.
Yep. I mean, you think you're over it, but...
Well, and I mean, like I was saying just a little while ago, I'm so addicted, and it is, like, especially now living alone and being even more isolated because it's 2020 and we're dealing with the pandemic, there are times that it is definitely my only social outlet, my only contact.
Yeah. And, I was... like a typical teenager, I was not a happy teenager, and I could not imagine having to compare myself to the girls on social media now. I mean, I have to say it, there was a TikTok the other night that was like, how do teens not have an awkward phase now? And I mean, they do. That's not the ones you're seeing on social media.
Well, and let's be honest. I mean, people post the best of themselves. They post the pictures that have the best filters. I mean, you and I were talking about it earlier too. I hate seeing my friends use filters. They gross me out. Even the funny cutesy filters where they like look like they have a Minnie Mouse bow or something like that. I'm like, no. I want to see who you are, wrinkles and all.
Yeah. And there's actually...
Or don't post it at all.
There's been a lot of influencer backlash where influencers have started coming out and going, this is what I look like normally, and this is me in my posed photos with perfect lighting when I'm sitting up straight and sucking it in and at a 3/4 profile angle. After 200 pictures, I pick the right one, and so I actually like that there's a lot of them that are doing that now, who are like, I don't have perfect skin, I put on tons and tons of makeup and I use 3 filters. I like how people are finally starting to be honest. I don't think there's enough of that. There's actually laws, I believe, in the UK now that limit the use of retouched photos in advertising, and just like cigarette warnings, if a photo is retouched, they have to list it down at the bottom that, yes, Julia Roberts looks perfect wrinkle-free, but it's not because of oil of Olay. It's because we used Photoshop.
Right.
So you kind of see the tide turning a little bit, but we're in that, that beginning phase of it where there's not enough of it and people are still having issues because of it. One of the interesting things that, was on the movie was that dating and teens getting their driver's licenses is
like
dropping.
Some of these kids haven't ever dated.
They are, social media is social isolating.
Yeah.
It
may have been the same guy. I didn't write down who it was, but I really liked how one of the people that they interviewed discussed stuff as, kids' popularity or kids' perceived popularity on social media as fake, brittle popularity.
Mm-hmm. And it's so true too, because there are very few social media celebrities that have made it big, and stay relevant. There's a couple of channels on TikTok that I follow, and one of them is the cast iron guy. And his channel is all about, his collection of cast iron and how he maintains it and things like that. I know it sounds
so
stupid.
Bizarre.
It sounds stupid, but he had one video go viral and he went from 500 followers to 82,000 followers overnight. You know, I don't even know the guy's real name. And in 6 months, I will probably forget all about him. And so I could not imagine being a teenager that has this brush with, you know, fleeting popularity, and then to have it taken away and to have that isolation and irrelevance all over again, but only ever having touched the stars once. You know?
I literally had a young local person tell me that he was going to totally monetize his YouTube channel, and that was how he was going to make a living. I'm like, it's just not realistic.
You're like, honey, I have a podcast. Have you ever heard of me?
That's several. Thank you very much. Have you ever heard of me?
Right. Like, I don't do this for the fame. I do it, you know, because I like to hear myself talk.
For the fame or the money. Right?
Right. But yeah, you know, I kind of feel like there should be some social media influencer out there who gives everyone the Michael Jordan talk. Michael Jordan used to go into schools and he used to talk about the importance of an education, because he's like, all of you dream about becoming a movie star or a basketball player or a rap star or whatever. Yeah, like maybe one of you out of the 1,000 kids in this, you know, auditorium are going to be, you know, famous. We have like one famous guy from Juneau. He's a basketball player. His name is Carlos Boozer.
Is he still playing basketball?
I don't think he is. He still is doing the basketball camps.
I didn't know. So,
yeah, sports ball. But you know, local celebrity out of a population of 30,000, you know, like, yeah, good luck, kid, monetizing your YouTube. But, you know, and for the ones that do get that overnight fame, what are you going to do to stay relevant? And what happens when the spotlight fades, you know?
As it inevitably does for everybody.
Yep.
Arlo Guthrie retired this week. You don't know who Arlo Guthrie is.
No, I don't.
He's a singer-songwriter. His dad was Woody Guthrie. Also a very famous singer-songwriter. Arlo Guthrie had a stroke and retired from music this week.
Wow.
So yes, it inevitably fades for everyone.
You just need to change media. Like, you know who I discovered was on TikTok the other night? Mandy Patinkin.
Oh God.
Oh, he was so funny. He was doing something on the debates, and Trump kept saying something, and I can't remember what it was, but like
he would do I do not think you would know what that word means what you think that means. Yeah.
Yep, from The Princess Bride. Yeah.
So I have to tell you, I've heard he's a monster.
Mandy Patinkin?
Yeah. I know. Very disappointing. 0 stars. Do not recommend.
I was so part of me is very, very disappointed that he left Criminal Minds in season 2 or 3. The other part of me is I kind of get why he did, is because he was in disagreement of the content that they were putting out. He basically saw them as glorifying, you know, rapists and murderers and things like that, and you know, violence. And I totally get his side of it, but it's the show went on without you, Anne. Like in season 12 or something.
All right, so back to the movie, because I think we're just about ready to wrap this up. I thought the guy who had to write himself software to keep himself from reading Reddit was my hero. Because really? I kind of feel like I need to do that for myself to keep myself off of Facebook.
Oh my God, that's funny. Yeah, he was kind of like I get Reddit. Like, for me, Reddit is where you go to find like information on games. There's a lot of threads on games and stuff like that, but like Reddit isn't a big thing for me. So I was like, really? Bless you.
See, that's my COVID sneeze.
I was like, so Reddit, I didn't understand the Reddit addiction.
I have some friends who are really into Reddit, so.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So I've heard this statistic before this movie, but it's always shocking when it's said out loud again, that fake news spreads 6 times faster on Twitter than real news.
Oh, so that actually brings up one of the things, and it was one of the last things that I wrote down, but where they were talking about not agreeing on what truth is really the underlying problem in all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought we're so screwed because we can't agree on the truth.
Nope. There was literally a Karen video, and I'm sorry if your name is Karen.
I say Ivanka.
It's just how everyone knows it. But the lady was like, you have your facts, I have mine. And I'm like, that's not how facts work.
Right.
Like...
someone posted something similar. It may have been the same thing. And I was like, here's the truth. We're all entitled to our own beliefs,
mm-hmm.
but they're not the same thing as facts.
Correct. And, the reason, and I don't think it has anything to do with Twitter, it has always been this way. It's because it's clickbait. We talked about it with Hail Satan, where the TST puts out, they were very careful about what they put out in the documentary, in social media, in the media itself, because the media will write these clickbaity headline stories that nobody will really read past. And because it's the title of the article is always misleading, but nobody will ever read further. But they will share. People share articles without even reading them. We have a president that will share satirical news sites unironically.
So I actually have to say that I clicked on something on Twitter tonight that I was going to share, and it said, you can read the article before you share it. And I was like, ooh, I feel called out. And I did not share it.
Oh my goodness. That's funny.
Right?
Wow. See? And that goes back to something they said in the movie. The AI is starting to write itself.
No, it was good. I felt super called out, and I was like, okay, that's legit.
Oh, that's funny. So, do you think that we are on the precipice of utopia or dystopia?
There was one of the guys in the film who said that he was concerned that we were looking at civil war.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree. I'm pretty scared. Especially with the election coming up and with how incredibly divided we are. I'm pretty scared.
Yeah. Yeah. You never think that it's if you'd asked me 10 years ago if I was going to live through, a pandemic and fake news and a possible dictatorship, like that stuff never happens. That happened to your grandparents' grandparents, that doesn't happen. But yeah, you never think it's going to happen to you. I'm sure the people going through the Civil War were just like, until it happened, you didn't think it was happening.
Oh, yeah. We're living in this ridiculously awful movie. And, whoever wrote this screenplay, I want them to lose their Screen Actors Guild membership. This is horrible.
So in the alternative universe that is without COVID, you and I are in Atlanta right now.
Oh my God, that is so depressing.
You have no idea how long I've been holding that in.
Okay, so for people who don't listen to Biters, we were supposed to go to Atlanta for a Walking Dead convention, and I had actually bought VIP tickets for us, and we were going to see and meet and have a photo op with Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Oh my God, I am so intensely disappointed.
Sorry, I'm sorry to ruin your night, but I'm just like, God. If in the alternative universe where there is no such thing as COVID, or maybe the one where people wore their masks in June, we would be in Atlanta right now.
You know, and the other thing is we could have potentially met Diana and Steve. We might have met Phil. We might have met Brian.
But COVID is fake news.
Ugh. I am just sick.
Oh, now I feel a little bad.
You should feel bad. Now I'm definitely going to have to go watch Rudy Giuliani touching himself.
Because that'll make everything better.
All right, speaking of Rudy Giuliani, the segment where they are going over like some of the disinformation that was out there just in the last year on social media. So the COVID disinformation that was being shown was terrifying. I mean, especially because now I've had 2 people in my very small practice who have residual issues from their COVID. I have a friend who has residual issues from her COVID infection, and they're like showing this guy out in a park scanning with his phone going, see, nobody with COVID. There is no COVID.
I actually remember
I wanted to
that being
throat
posted.
punch that guy. I wanted to throat punch him.
I don't remember where I saw it, if it was just featured on the news or if I saw it on Twitter or whatever, but I actually specifically remember that clip going, yeah, you're out in a field with no other people. That's why you don't see anybody with COVID.
So the other thing that I didn't realize was that Facebook was so responsible for the slaughter of the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar. I mean, the segment where they're talking about how every time anybody bought a new cell phone in Myanmar, Facebook was installed. And then immediately there was all of this stuff when they opened up their Facebook app, which was often the only app that they knew. It had all of this hatred toward Muslims. And I was like, oh my God, Facebook drove a slaughter of a minority in Myanmar.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, there was just stuff like that in this that was super shocking for me. And did you see that Dan Sullivan, the senator from Alaska, who is a complete and utter travesty of a human being, had a little cameo in this movie?
How did I miss it? I must have been on social media.
So, when Tristan Harris was talking in front of Congress, when he was testifying in front of Congress, one of the people who was questioning him was Dan Sullivan.
Oh.
Like, monster!
Ugh,
which, by the way, another monster, Lisa Murkowski, announced her support for Amy Coney Barrett tonight. She is going to vote in favor of her.
Yep. You and I have already been on Twitter adding her.
Yeah.
It's gonna be interesting to see what the next week or so holds.
I have seen stuff on, here we go, social media, saying that the next several months between the next inauguration are going to be very, very grim, regardless of who wins, regardless of who is inaugurated. That we are looking at a very dark and grim time in the U.S., and I think that's very true.
We are so divided. And social media helped us get there.
It did.
Yep.
All right. We are now just past the 2-hour mark because we apparently can't talk as the Real Housewives for anywhere under 2 hours. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think that really covers it.
Oh, what? So I am going to pose this question because it was posed in the documentary, and then I will let it go. How do you wake up from the Matrix when you don't realize you're in the Matrix?
Somebody woke Neo up. So hopefully there is our Morpheus out there who's going to come wake us up.
I don't know, man. It's pretty grim.
Is Tristan Harris our Morpheus?
Well, the Atlantic did say that he was the closest thing that Silicon Valley has to a conscience. They did.
Oh, I will probably give his podcast a listen. Your undivided attention.
I will too.
Yeah.
And while I know myself well enough to know that I'm not going to be deleting Facebook off of my phone anytime soon, I will try to spend a little less time on Facebook.
I am not guaranteeing anything about TikTok. At least I'm honest. At least I'm honest.
All right. Well, I'm not sure what we're going to talk about next week. We do have a few people who have talked to me about coming on as guests, so that's exciting.
We are super excited about having guests on. We just want to make sure this thing is up and running.
Yeah, exactly.
Before we start having people on.
And I think Lilith probably gets the first guest slot because she was the first to reach out to us, and we really do need to watch The Hate U Give.
Yes, absolutely.
So hopefully our iTunes feed will be up and running here in the next little while. As I mentioned earlier, it got resubmitted again today. There shouldn't be any reason that YouTube should turn, or that YouTube, oh my God, that iTunes should turn us down, but you never know. Life is weird. We did just rail about social media, so...
our inaugural podcast was on Satanism. So.
Right. Although I'm sure there are satanic podcasts out there if we searched for them. Maybe I'll use DuckDuckGo.
Oh man. So, yeah. Kind of sounds like a bunch of weirdos out there.
Yeah, watch out for those weirdos.
Watch out for those weirdos. We
are the weirdos, mister.
Have a good week, everybody.
Have a good week, and we'll talk again soon.
Bye.
Bye.